Good evening. The time is now 5:33, and I would like to call to order the November 13th, 2023 Academic Achievement Committee meeting for the school year 2023-2024. I am Dr. Zipporah Miller, Chair of this committee and the District 5 representative for the Prince George's County Board of Education. If everyone could please introduce themselves, starting with the Vice Chair, the committee members, any other visiting board members, Prince George's County Public Schools administration and staff, and the board office staff.
Hi, Pamela Boozer Struther, Vice Chair of the committee and District 3 Board of Education member.
Hi, Judy Mickens Murray, ex-Yale Fisher, a member of the Academic and Policy Committee.
Hi, I'm Madeline Lasalle Frazier, and I am District A representative.
Hi, I'm Judy White, Chief Academic Officer.
Good evening, Rasheen Davis, Chief of Schools and #1 Eagles fan. Sorry, I can't find my PGCPS background. I'm going to look for it.
We can't be friends, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, not good. Not with a Dallas fan here.
Steeler Nation.
Okay, guys, business now, because we're not happy with any of you commanders here.
I know this is recording. Now everyone knows our football teams.
I apologize. Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Liz Faison. I'm the Associate Superintendent of Student Services.
And good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Tisa Holly, Instructional Specialist for Student Services.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rosa Lopez. I'm Board Administrative Secretary.
Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening. Ms. Lopez, could you please call the roll?
Yes. Dr. Zipporah Miller.
Present.
Ms. Boozer Struther.
Present.
Mr. Jackson. Mrs. Lasalle Frazier.
Present.
Mr. Murray. And as ex officio, Mrs. Mickens Murray.
Present.
Okay, we'll move on to the adoption. We have a quorum, so we'll move on to the adoption of the agenda. May I have a motion to adopt the November 13th, 2023 meeting agenda?
I move to adopt the November 13th, 2023 meeting agenda.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, the agenda is adopted. Let's move on to approving the minutes from the October 16th, 2023 meeting. May I have a motion to approve the October 16th, 2023 meeting minutes?
I move for approval of the October 16th, 2023 meeting minutes.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. The meeting minutes are adopted. There are no registered public comment speakers this evening, so we'll move on to discussion item 3.0. So at this time, I will now yield the floor over to Dr. Judith White to present her team and this evening's agenda.
Thank you so much. So on behalf of myself and more importantly, my colleague, Dr. Davis, we brought tonight before you Dr. Elizabeth Faison, our Associate Superintendent of Student Services, to talk about improving culture and climate through social emotional learning and the theory behind the practice. The reason I'm emphasizing the theory behind the practice is she's going to introduce some really good things about what she's doing this year. And you're going to want to ask her details, data, and all that good stuff. And remember, she's going to come back with all of that and possibly individuals from the field in March. So tonight is about what she's been doing. Although we're getting her in November, these are things that have been planned and they are executing, and she's kind of just sharing the theory behind what she's doing this year, the why it's irrelevant and important, and hopefully what she wants to yield and attain from these things. And then she's January, February, she's in March. She will be back again to share outcomes from starting in September all the way through March. So with that, I turn it over to Dr. Faison to talk about improving culture and climate through SEL.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for just the invitation to speak to work that we know and love in student services. We're very excited to talk about the culture and climate and really the theory behind social emotional learning, and give some nuggets around what our school district is doing in leading social emotional learning, as well as what our goals are and plans are for this year. As we begin, I did want to share a brief video.
And there's done right from preparation.
I'm sorry. I did want to share a brief video that gives, if social emotional learning is implemented in schools well, what we can look forward to as other school districts around the nation have done so. And so I'll pause just briefly. The video is a minute or two, and show what we can look forward to.
I'm a data guy, I like numbers, and we have a lot of evidence that social emotional learning has made a difference.
We had a graduation rate of 62%. Last year, we put up a record-breaking 84%.
Over the last 5 years, our expulsions have been cut in half.
We were suspending about 13,000 days of out-of-school suspension. We were 10 times the average for any school district in Ohio. And within that first year alone, we were able to reduce our out-of-school suspensions by 55%.
Attendance rates went up. We know that attendance is directly correlated to academic improvement and achievement, but it also had other outcomes that were extremely important, which is students feeling more connected to schools, educators having to think outside the box, helping students overcome some of the challenges that are in their life.
There's an 11-to-1 return on investment. So for every dollar invested in programming around social emotional learning, we're seeing that they're saving $11 on remedial programs, dropout prevention. There's lots of reasons that people are coming to the conclusion that this is something that we need to be prioritizing.
And so it's with that that I am proud to say that Prince George's County Public Schools is in fact prioritizing social emotional learning in our school system. One thing I wanted to note, and that is, social emotional learning is that process that we engage in where we help students and adults really learn those key components that we call CASEL components as it relates to social emotional learning. They learn self-awareness, they learn how to manage themselves, they learn social awareness, like the implications of their behaviors on others, how to build great relationships, healthy, long-lasting relationships, including how to resolve their conflicts between one another and still maintain the relationships that they have with their peers, as well as decision-making. One of the things that I wanted to note is that social emotional learning can be implemented in the classroom through curriculum, as well as through strategies that our teachers are using to have those intentional conversations with students during the day that improve upon a student learning the competencies. It can also occur through our mental health clinicians, our school counselors, and the time that our psychologists spend with students as well. I did want to note that social emotional learning in and of itself is not new. I began my career as a school counselor back in 1994. And it was during that time that individuals who worked with bullying, who worked with emotional intelligence, who worked with character development, came together to frame what is officially known as social emotional learning. As you see in this particular slide, CASEL is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning organization that officially coined that phrase, and it developed the framework that you see. It is also the framework that PGCPS uses in our school system to determine how social emotional learning will be taught and what we want our students to ultimately learn and be able to do. And so there is research that talks about the implications for social emotional learning being infused into our schools, whether it's through the curriculum, whether it's through counseling, whether it's through courageous conversation, classroom meetings. There is research that talks about the improvements that school systems can see when social and emotional learning is taught. Ultimately, we want, as we say in our strategic plan, we want to improve our culture and climate and provide healthy and safe learning environments for our students. And so research talks about improved academic performance for our students when social emotional learning is taught to our students. They increase their well-being, their connectedness to their peers, as well as to their instructors or their teachers. We've heard in our superintendent's town hall far too many times the instance of bullying arising in some of the conversations around our parents as it relates to bullying, harassment, and intimidation. And so that is also a component that school districts have seen a reduction in when students learn self-management, self-awareness, relationship building, problem solving, and also improve relationships across the board. And so this is what PGCPS is intentional about seeing once social emotional learning is taught across all disciplines in all schools by all educators and by all school counselors, mental health clinicians, and our school psychologists. I think what I like the most, and I, again, started off being a school counselor, we learned about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And one of those needs that Maslow talked about was students really needing a sense of belonging. They needed a place to fit, a place where they thought the individuals around them saw them, valued them, and where they were included. And so research also shows that when social emotional learning is taught in schools, the students' sense of belonging increases. Also, when it is role modeled by the individuals, our leaders, our teachers, as well as our community, what social emotional learning really looks like. When they see us model it, then they're also able to glean right choices as it relates to those competencies that we talked about earlier. I'll talk a little bit about curriculum and what we're doing as it relates to curriculum in future slides. But this particular slide talks about how even teachers and staff who feel supported and are valued are more likely to be committed to delivering high quality CEL instruction. Additional research talked about the fact that teacher retention grew when teachers taught in environments that were safe, that were orderly, and where social emotional learning was most prevalent. So we not only see the benefits for our students and our school community at large, we see a benefit for the adults in the building, and certainly around teacher retention, which is a goal for PGCPS. Additionally, though our school system has restorative practices in place, we see in research that when CEL is implemented and it is taught to students on a daily basis, they learn from their mistakes when we're not just punitive in our practices, because students are going to make mistakes. They're going to miss it. So they're going to do what students are doing as they learn and they grow and they develop. and develop how to make right choices, and then how to reconcile their differences. But as we employ restorative approaches with our students, then we see discipline concerns reduced in some of our schools. And we see students' ability to have empathy for their peers, and also they are able to learn conflict resolution skills, very much like we have peer mediation in schools now. Additionally, character development is something we've heard about many, many years ago, but it also dovetails nicely into what social emotional learning is intended to do. We've talked about performance character. Performance character really means those skills that students learn around being resilient, about being problem solving. Do they have grit? Do they have commitment? Do they have tenacity? Do they have what it takes to complete their assignments and their instruction? And so those types of things, when we look at character performance and character education, our school system is employing social emotional learning strategies to do just that. Improve relationships across the board is something that we will see when we implement social emotional learning. Hopefully we will see those referrals, those disciplinary referrals reduced. And we'll also see our students be resilient. Our students come to school sometimes with a heavy weight and a lot of responsibility. Our students come from a diverse background and from multiple situations and barriers and component family dynamics. And so what social emotional learning allows our students to do is it allows them to be resilient. It allows them to bounce back. It allows them to remain steady in their academic courses, even through some of the challenges and the setbacks that they face. And for many of them, these types of challenges are beyond them, or they're adult driven. And so social emotional learning really helps our students learn the skills that they need in order to be overcomers. And so student engagement is something that we see that also improves when social emotional learning is taught. When social emotional learning is taught, the culture and climate of a school improves, and students want to come, and students want to stay, and they want to engage with their peers. They also want to engage the learning, and they also want to engage the instructors as well. And so I wanted to just take a moment to say, a lot of times social emotional learning is effective beyond the curriculum that we put in place, or the lessons that are taught, or the counseling that is delivered to our students. What we see in some districts, and we've done pulling some plans and resources as we've taken some SEL courses, myself and Dr. Tisa, looking at how policies and practices help shape what school systems do. So not only do we want a course available to our students or lessons available to our students, we really want social emotional learning to be prevalent throughout our school district, so that our language is SEL-friendly, that we're communicating to our community our promise around students being able to be self-aware, that they're able to self-manage, that they're able to have healthy relationships, healthy decision-making, and to problem solve. And so this slide just recognizes how our leaders are so critical in that work. And so some school districts following the same lines around institutionalizing social emotional learning, so that it is not just a buzzword or something that has become popular and fades, but that we actually have what we call SEL saturation in Prince George's County Public Schools. And that is when our adults are actually learning, when our district policies and our practices use language that talks about social emotional learning and how we're infusing that in our practices, in our Students' Rights and Responsibilities Handbook, in our administrative procedures, and our board policies, in our presentations, but that it really is a common thread throughout all of what we say, all of what we communicate to the public, and all of what we model in schools. Additionally, some schools have written social emotional competencies into their vision, and also have provided professional learning to educators in the building so that they're able to actually implement and infuse SEL throughout every content, whether it's math or reading or social studies or science or art or music or any other subject, that all of our instructors know how to infuse SEL across the disciplines. And so in looking at the role our school leaders play, we talked earlier about our leaders modeling, and when they model for students and for staff, that it helps to promote a positive culture and climate throughout the entire building. We also talked about the fact when there's a positive culture and climate, even our teachers want to stay. It adds to or increases our teacher retention in schools. So our school leaders can foster this sense of community, not just with our students and parents who enter the building, but also with the educators who are in the building every day. And so providing professional development to our teachers as it relates to building their capacity to, number one, have a social emotional learning experience themselves. So SEL does not just work for our students, but it works for adults as well. And so in the very same way that our students' mental health is important, the mental health of our educators and our leaders is as important as well. And one thing I will say is in the fall, when we led our first certification course, where we had a number of teachers and educators and principals to be certified in social emotional learning, they completed a survey and they talked about that transformative experience that they had in taking the social emotional training themselves. And so some of the commentary that we saw from the responses of those who took the course talked about how their lens for trauma changed, how they were able to engage students differently, where they looked at not just what the student did, but looking at the possible why did the student make this decision, and then being able to connect that student to mental health resources or other resources that the student may need. And so we want SEL to be an experience, not just one that educators are teaching students, but one that they have themselves, where their lens around trauma or their lens around student need or student behavior is enlightened, and their response to students are restorative and transformative in their actions. Where we also want to see is our families and our communities and our parents engaged in social emotional learning as well. And then looking at the data to see how it's working, if we're making the impact that we want to make in our discipline and our attendance, our students now beginning to come to school gradually in the way that they had not in the past. Do they have that one trusted adult in the building that they did not have in the past? Are there SEL lessons that are being taught in classrooms? Are students and teachers building relationships where teachers are learning their students and students are understanding that their educators care for them? Looking at the data to see where the shifts are. And as Dr. White said, we'll be doing that in March. But today is talking about the why and the premise beyond social emotional learning and why it's important in PGCPS. Lastly, I wanted to talk about the goals that we hope to see this year as we continue our SEL saturation, and PGCPS. And so I'll just take a moment to say, we began our first cohort last year with Mount Holyoke University and the National Network for State Teachers of the Year. During this cohort, we had 45 educators, principals, instructional lead teachers, counselors, psychologists, certified over 4 months, taking 3 courses where they are certified in social emotional learning. This group is also certified to be able to teach other teachers in PGCPS about social emotional learning. One of the things I will say that's occurring right now is we had 1,200 educators to register for our first self-paced social emotional learning class. And so we continue to find additional ways through our Title IV grant to fund those professional development opportunities through Mount Holyoke University, where we're having more teachers not just be trained in SEL, receiving an overview and knowing how to infuse it in their classrooms, but to become SEL ambassadors, that they're certified in the work. The additional piece I will say is we also worked with St. Elizabeth University and Rutgers have a program around social emotional learning, leadership, and character development. During this particular program, we had 35 central office and school leadership employees to go through that program and become certified in SEL leadership. And so it's intended that these 2 groups, our certified instructor group, certified facilitators, work with our certified leadership team to roll out SEL and PGCPS over the next 4 to 5 years. And so again, we're working with our Title IV grant and requesting those funds so that we're having the monies to provide professional development as well as tuition for our employees who want to go that extra step beyond just knowing how to infuse it, but becoming those SEL ambassadors. Additionally, during our course with St. Elizabeth, we had to complete a practicum. And so each group took an area, a policy, or they worked on branding the work, or they developed a professional development course, or they worked on a cadre of lessons that will be provided to our educators. And so what we must do, and you see increasing visibility and marketing and branding, all of our resources. So we want the logo, we want the website, and we want to have a repository where teachers across all grade levels will be able to go and glean SEL activities. And this is beyond what our school counselors are currently doing and rolling out in their classroom guidance with students. Additionally, we want to improve our multi-tiered systems of support. So right now, our Administrative Procedure 5143 just gives us the guidelines around how we should be identifying and referring students who have either an academic or behavioral or attendance issue, and how this team comes together to really plan and provide a program for the student, whether it's 6 to 8 weeks, and how those strategies should be implemented. And then we're coming back to assess the student's progress. We are working with academics who has done just a fantastic job in creating our new multi-tier systems of support site that will be made available to our educators. Dr. Tisa has been working with their team as well to revise our administrative procedure so that it is just all aligned and that we're giving it fresh eyes. So we will be rolling that out with Dr. White's team shortly. Additionally, last year, we began our Wellness Wednesday sessions for parents. And so to speak, this is an SEL activity for our parents to be able to participate in. We are still doing Wellness Wednesday sessions for our parents. As a matter of fact, one is being taped right now for this month's iteration. And so this year, instead of holding the sessions via Zoom, we are traveling to various schools, to their calm spaces, and we're holding podcasts with parents, with students, with principals, with counselors, mental health clinicians, and a number of instructors and educators across the district are chiming into our Wellness Wednesday session. So that will continue. Additionally, ensuring that all schools have a mental health clinician. And so this is the first year that we have rolled out an allocation to every single school to have a mental health clinician. We currently have about 8 vacancies in our schools where we're still looking for a mental health clinician. But when we are fully staffed, every school will have its own mental health therapist. And then layered on top of that counseling support is our Hazel Health. Hazel Health provides a medical component where our students are able to be seen in school and often sent back to the classroom without their parents having to take off of work and make an appointment in the evening and take the student wherein they may miss a day of work and or a day of school. And so Hazel also provides mental health counseling to our students as well this year. This year, we rolled Hazel out to our elementary schools and to our charter schools. And so these are our goals this year, is that every school is fully staffed with a clinician, that we're rolling out additional staff who are certified in SEL, and those who have a SEL competency or SEL literacy, so to speak, that our resources are visible, that we are creating lessons that we're expanding to every educator and providing access so that we have equitable resources across the system, and also making sure that our parents have an opportunity to learn as well, and have those social emotional learning activities that are impactful to them. And so I've reached the end of my presentation and I'm open for questions.
Thank you so much. So I will open it up for question. So board members, if you have any questions, just signify by raising your hand. Oh, we'll start with Board Member LaSaya Frazier.
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation. This is an area that is very dear to my heart. I've worked probably the last 10 years in doing exactly what you're doing now, putting together an SEL program for a tier 3 school, which I lead. So I love the idea of having SEL implemented in all levels at the Prince George's County School District. I feel that it's definitely going to be a big endeavor just by the sheer numbers of students that we serve. I commend you for starting to put a mental health professional in every school. I do have some questions about how we're utilizing that mental health professional. How are they prioritizing the referrals, and how are they being utilized at the different schools? So that's my first question. I also had questions about, I love the idea of having the teacher academies, creating SEL competency at different levels. I wonder if we're doing, if we have any ideas in terms of establishing an SEL academy for parents as well. It's something that I recently started. It's a great way to train other parents and really complement the whole family, not just the child, but the parents. And I love the leadership piece. I love the instructional piece. So just to start with those questions for the mental health professionals and the parent piece.
Thank you for that. And I may need to hear more about what you're doing at your school. But our principals receive a PowerPoint that gives an overview as well as additional training on how to use our mental health clinicians in schools. Our mental health clinicians, I believe, are used in a very different way than they are in other LEAs. In other school systems, they primarily are providing, small group counseling, individual counseling to students. Our clinicians are expected to lead an integrated program. So they are sitting in a referral team meeting or MTSS meeting. They are doing classroom observations. A lot of times they may not know a student who is being referred to them for a particular issue. And sometimes a classroom observation is absolutely necessary for them to understand, gain more context around the student. Every other Tuesday, the Office of Community Schools and Student Services meets, and this is maybe the third year. We used to meet every single Tuesday, and as we get a little better at it as establishing what this work looks like, our Mental Health Steering Committee meets every other Tuesday to talk about the very kinds of things that you're talking about. How can we make sure that all mental health clinicians are prioritizing the students that they should be seeing? How are referrals made? That was a conversation we just had with our mental health providers a week ago around how the referrals can be made and how we can put something on the web where parents can refer students. And we know that parents have relationships with schools and they can refer through the principal or the counselor or to the mental health clinician themselves. But we have a very unique opportunity this year because we have a clinician in every school. So now we can advertise widely in the way that we had not in the past. The way that we utilize our counselors, our psychologists, and our clinicians really is in a triaged fashion. And Hazel Health. And so our school counselors are differently credentialed. They are not licensed clinical staff. They are certified by Maryland State Department of Education to provide counseling to students that remove barriers to them being able to access their academic program. Also, they're doing the academic piece, they're doing college readiness, they're doing personal, social. So they're doing that type of counseling. And so where a student may need a little more, they may see a psychologist. And where the student's needs may be even more intense, then those are the cases really that we want to refer to our mental health and clinical staff. Our Hazel Health will deal with provide services to tier 2 students. We do not refer students who are in absolute crisis to Hazel Health because they receive services they can in 7 in the morning through 7 at night when they're not at school and certainly in school during the day. And so that's how we try to differentiate and use those resources. I will say lastly, if you can imagine the caseload that a mental health clinician can have between 25 and 40 on their active caseload at a time, where they're seeing these children 30 and 40 minutes every week. There are some schools that have 2,500, 2,800 students, and we know that another mental health clinician is necessary at some point. But I think we're starting at a really, really great place as a school system, just having a clinician available in every building for those students who need that. And no, we hadn't talked about the Parent Cell Academy, but it's a great idea.
Oh, thank you. I'll let my other colleagues ask questions. I'll come back for my second round.
Board Chair Mickens-Murray.
Thank you. And I think this was a great presentation. Everything that I had a question about, you really answered as you went forward in your presentation. I'm truly interested in the relationships and the social emotional training for leaders. Definitely interested in that. And since our board member here is also maybe a quasi-expert in the area, maybe she could work with you guys to put something together for the school board. I think we need to understand it from a leadership perspective. And I think it would help us all if we could start modeling some of that as we do our meetings and stuff. So I wanted to put that on the table. So Madeline, are you writing?
I am, and I would love for us to do some self-regulation activities, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Pam Boulder-Strother.
Thank you so much. I'm going to do my best to be succinct, but I do this thing where I go to the blueprint and now the data dashboards and the new reports we just got the other day, and I'm seeing all this alignment and questions. So where I guess the questions that came up for me is, I think this is in part two, when all this alignment with divisions that intersect. So like, you know, like how you're working with Community Schools Division, Dr. Williams Horton's team, and how you're working with Dr. Sheila Jackson's team, where all those intersections are, and I know there's more, I'm sure I could think of others. So that's something I'm interested in hearing more about, is all of that alignment. And then when I look at the data, I was interested in, well, one, I want to say that it's very encouraging that so many of the employees feel prepared to incorporate SEL and even trauma informed. It's very high, like 80%. So, you know, I want to just congratulate you on that. But that's like a self-evaluation. So I'd be curious to know if you're able to know the gaps in between like employees' self-evaluation versus maybe what other data might say there's more training to be done. But the ownership and acceptance of this has come a long way under your leadership. So thank you for that. And then the other is I was looking at the overview of mental health and wellness CSI performance in the assessment, the infographic that talks about the percentage of survey respondents agreeing that their child's behavior improved after working with a counselor, and then the percentage of respondents agreeing that their grades improved. I was curious to know about the improvements in behavior perception of our staff of those same students, because I think that's where, you know, we learn more from the school building is from the employees about the student behavior. So would they also be agreeing with the improvements, which we see as very high percentages here? So I'd be interested if that perspective is also being collected and you know, what that says. So I'm just trying to make sense of all of our data tracking and our plans. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Boozer Strother. I wanted to really give credit to the Office of Professional Learning, who framed this program around social emotional learning when ESSER began to be a thing. And they brought along student services to help, you know, join forces in lifting the work and finding the right type of partners, to university partners, to even do this work with. So it is the Office of Professional Learning that led this work, framed it, and we worked together as a team to see what you see right now. As it relates to community schools, Dr. Williams Horton and I meet every other Tuesday. She is a part of that mental health steering committee that meets. School counseling also meets. We also have our budget staff on that meeting, because we're also looking to see where we can move a half-time elementary school to a full-time. As you know, our ESSER funds will be sunsetting, and we are requesting for those non-community schools general operating dollars for that. And so it is a team of us who meet every other Tuesday. Dr. Sheila Jackson is certainly a partner and has hired counselors in her advocacy work with students. But we also present our work to leaders of parent-teacher organizations and PTAs, associations. I think it's a great question around how many educators would believe that a student's behavior improved beyond what the student is reporting. We had not given thought to adding that as a part of our survey, but I think we should. I think the nuance is asking the teacher of the same student if their behaviors improved. And so I think there may be opportunities for us to think through how we can do that. But last year we did launch the survey to just begin to assess with our parents and our students the impact that they felt the mental health counseling services had on them, both academically as well as their overall well-being and as it related to behavior.
Thank you.
Any more questions or comments? Board Member LaSaya Frazier?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions. I'm very committed to this issue. So I want to know, in terms of we are in budget season, how are we, and is that something that you can share? What are some of the requests that are being made to continue this work? Just in terms of what in a new initiative. So I would like to know more about the budget. Specifically, one of the trends that I'm seeing for a lot of school districts is that they're hiring SEL coordinators for the schools. So beyond the counselor, somebody that could actually coordinate all the services, and beyond the school leader, so that we can be very strategic on the indicators that we're measuring for success, right? I'm wondering if that's something that we're looking into in Prince George's County. And I'm also wondering, beyond the mental health, the leadership training for our students. So working with students, we talked about bullying, and we also know that studies show that one of the best ways to intervene on bullying is to have students be the leaders, right? So what kind of work are we doing in terms of like upstanders work, or training our students within the schools, specifically high schools and middle schools, I think, to work as leaders in the work? So I have so many other questions, but just just those for now.
So the ones that I could remember, I wanted to say, as it relates to our budget requests, I think we're trying to be really strategic around our budget request this year. There are some things that we requested through the general operating dollars, and then there were some things that we wrote into the Title IV grant, because we have safe and healthy schools component of Title IV Part A. And so this year in the Title IV grant, we are asking for a stipend for just an individual, starting at the beginning, having principals to just identify who their social emotional learning ambassador would be, and then working through that Title IV grant and providing those individuals additional stipend. Hopefully they are our SAIL certified team, who are, those ambassadors, and they're training in their schools, and then they're also training across the county. But we are requesting general operating dollars for mental health clinicians for those non-community schools. We recognize that there is a need for additional staffing to just do this work. And so as we continue to, roll out the school year, just being more deliberate in our ask when we know exactly what it is that we need and where we want to be. The last thing I will say about bullying and using peers, I agree. Peers are the biggest influence on other peers, and research everywhere has proven that to be the case. Excuse me one second. I will say most recently in our Student Government General Assembly, Dr. Tisa Holly had an opportunity to provide information to all the students that were present. And they serve as student government delegates in their schools. Dr. Tisa, talk about that, please.
Yes, ma'am. And so during that assembly, I had the opportunity to be able to give the students not just a pep talk, but at the same time, real tangible steps 1, 2, 3, what they can do realistically to be able to take that message back. And several of the schools have even followed up to say, hey, we want you to come and speak or to help us out, or can we send our ideas to you to make sure that these are good, viable ideas and things that we can roll out. So that's another way of being able to nurture student voice to be able to get them on board with what we're doing as far as SEL is concerned. And with the PGRAS, that consisted of the student governments for middle and high school. So that definitely touches that grouping that you mentioned.
Thank you.
And I think we have an opportunity. It's a great question. I think we have an opportunity, at least through the cadre of student government, to begin to build those types of teachings or trainings that we can use to deputize those students as leaders of a safe and healthy environment, and watch that spread and multiply across other students, with other students across the schools. But I think it's a great idea. And we work very closely with Mr. Moody in our office. And so he allows us from time to time an opportunity just in speaking to the smaller advisory so that we can pitch things that we want to do, and the students give us input about the best way to go about doing it before we roll things out large scale. So I think, you know, for us, just going back, having that conversation with Mr. Moody to see, you know, if we can have a conversation with the SMOB advisory or the student government advisory, and to see what they would think and recommend. And then we try to roll with that.
Yeah, I think even if we started with one pilot school to kind of just see how it works, and maybe have some lessons learned and replicate it slowly but surely, and see what works for our school district, because every school district is different. And then the last thing I want to give kudos to the French Immersion School. I went there, Maya Angelou, and they have the most amazing restorative room. I fell in love with that room. I think that every school should have one like that. And would love for our budget to allow us to do so for our schools, because it was just this place that not only the students were taking advantage, but also the teachers, and our teachers need spaces that are attractive and provide them with peace and relaxation as well. So replication. We have so many good things happening. We just need to consistently do it across all our schools.
I don't see any other hands, but I wanted to just ask a few questions, if I may. I'm just excited that to hear that we have a clinician in every building. I know that this is something that you've been striving to have, so having one, kudos. Just to have them in every building is a step forward. My question was around Hazel. Well, let me speak about the clinicians first. With the clinicians in every building, each principal you mentioned was provided with a PD slide deck on what are the most effective ways to use your clinician. Were there some opportunities for differentiation if you have a school where you're overwhelmed with cases for the need for the clinician versus somewhere, yeah, I'm not saying no school would have large cases, but some schools are just going to be higher than others. So is there some differentiation in how they can use their clinician, knowing that it's just one in every building for now?
I think that's a really great question, because coupled with having some clinical vacancies, we also have some schools where school counselor vacancies are an issue as well. And so in those schools, the mental health clinician feels the burden of, providing the counseling, wherein there is not another individual in the building outside of the psychologist who's providing the counseling services. So yes, there is some room for differentiation. Perhaps if they're doing more counseling services than they are doing student workshops. So I think those things are allowable and expected. I think we provide the framework of how we believe our clinicians should be utilized. However, what one individual may do more of than another may be germane to that school community and the need.
Makes sense. And this being the first year, as Prince, I should wait because Dr. White did say that we're going to have lessons from the field. So I'm going to wait with this question. And I'll go to Hazel Health. One of the things that I notice is every time I talk about Hazel Health, I know I hear about it. Is there a way that we can track or get data on the usage of Hazel Health? Because it seems like while it's evident, I know the schools have it on their website. I know you talk about it, it's out there, but it just seems like it's not getting out to the population where when they hear about it, it could be they forgot. Sometimes it's like they're hearing about it for the first time. Are there ways we could reconsider or consider getting the word out there so that they can meet reach the students, particularly in high school and in the elementary and middle school, for the parents, so that they're aware of that service?
You raise a really great point, because sometimes it doesn't matter how many times we believe we're communicating something. If the people aren't hearing you, there's still room for more advocacy and more announcement and marketing, like we referenced earlier. What I would first say is we do meet with Hazel team and the health department on a monthly basis. Now we're meeting with them twice a month, because we're rolling it out in all elementary schools. So we receive a data report frequently from Hazel around the usage that really is very encouraging. And it goes to show how many man hours are being conducted on behalf of Hazel, wherein our school staff team did not have to implement that. So it really is extending the arms of our own professional workforce. Additionally, it's able to return students back to school and really reserving or preserving those instructional hours in the classroom. But we do receive data frequently on a monthly basis, and I will ensure that my chief and Dr. White has the data to share with you.
That would be great. Do you have the trend? Like, for example, if you want to see the trend for the past, I'm going to say for the past year, is that available?
That data is available. We were provided with data on a monthly basis and then end of year totals for last year. And whatever it is that we want to see, we can request that. And the Hazel team has been very responsive as it relates to providing data updates.
That's great. Now I'm pushing it. Could we see it by school, or is that impossible? No, I don't want to stretch, getting the data is good, but if it's available by school, that would be great to see.
We'll make that request.
And if it's not, we'll take what they have. Vice Chair Pamela Booth Estrada.
Thank you so much. One opportunity that I'm seeing coming up that probably will need the support of not only us as committee board members, but of your big team, Dr. Faison, is the policy review of the health and wellness policy that sets those health and wellness committees in the school buildings is very out of date and coming up on March 26th. And when I look back at that, I could see the landscape has changed so much around the SEL part of this that I want to flag that for review and engagement at this point, because I think there's so much it could take some time to really think about and discuss, like even once Ms. Welsh brings that agenda item and has presentation on it. But I do see some gaps, and and there's also the continuing interest of parents around the concept of like recess and outdoor time, not only at the elementary level as a social emotional, viewing it through social emotional, and also through all the way through middle school. There was a lot of that really came up a lot after the pandemic, and so I wanted to raise that because it comes up in the policy, because we haven't really talked much about physical activity and mental health in this conversation yet. Thanks, Chair Dr. Miller. I just wanted to make that connection and make sure it's all on all of our radars.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? Right, I don't see any. So we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the follow-up items and next steps. Follow-up items from the October 16th, 2023 committee meeting have been posted on board docs for review. And with that said, I would like to thank the public, my colleagues, the Prince George's County Public Schools administrations and staff, and the board office for joining us this evening. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So it is now 6:34 and we are adjourned. Thank you so much. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank
Thank you. Good night.